Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm American Dan, and this is Wings and Rex. On today's episode, we're going to do something a little different. This is what I like to call How Dan Does It. And today on How Dan Does It, we're going to teach you how to go from cold and dark to engine start on the PMDG 737-900ER. We are cold and dark, sitting on the ground here in beautiful Hong Kong.
Remember one thing. You screw up just this much, you'll be flying a cargo plane full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong.
In this Yeti Airlines livery that I think is really cool. So props to whoever did that one. Very nice work. Okay, a couple of things just before we get started. I will be using JD's Checklist 737 NGX by JD. You can get it from flightsim.to. I'll put a link in the description below. The second caveat is, as you've heard me say before, I ain't no airline pilot, so I'm sure that this isn't the exact way that the professionals do it every time that they get in the jet and go to work. Just remember, we're having fun here. So this is how Dan does it. Okay, here we are inside the aircraft. Everything is cold and dark. Nothing's turned on. We take a look around here. Alright, so if we pull out our trusty checklist here, and those of you that are following around, you'll notice that there are two copies of the checklist. One is extended amplified procedures, and one is the quick start and simplified procedures. For the sake of this video and time, we're going to do the quick start and simplified procedures. So we want to start up here at the overhead panel. Okay, coming up here to the overhead panel, first thing we want to do is put some power on the airplane. So the DC battery goes on. And then we want to look down here and make sure our position light is on steady. It's on steady because I never turn it off. Alright, and according to this checklist, we would start the APU. You can also use a ground power unit, but for the sake of just keeping things simple, we'll go ahead and run off the APU. Hopefully all the climate activists won't yell at us for burning digital aviation fuel. Okay, so we want to make sure the APU is off before we do anything. There we go. And then we want to switch the APU on, and then go to start. Watching the low oil pressure here. Once it starts, we'll see the EGTs come up. And low pressure light goes out. Alright, the EGTs have stabilized, and then we will see here where it says APU generator off bus. Then once we turn the generators on, that light goes out and we hear things start to come alive. Alright, if we go further up on the overhead panel, the next step is to set your mode selectors. I have it set to instantly align. Not realistic, but it saves time. And then we go to nav and nav. Okay, now if we take a look at the fuel selection, it's the fuel system, we'll make sure that our crossfeed is off, meaning the valve is closed. Fuel pumps are on. Before we check the fuel pumps on, we want to make sure that we have fuel in all of these tanks. If you don't have fuel per se in the center tank, you don't need to turn on the center pumps. We have fuel in left, right, and center. So forward and aft for the left and right. And the center ones. And the low pressure lights go off, meaning the fuel pumps are on. And then we want to go over here to our emergency exit. Flip the guard down to arm the emergency exit lights. Armed and guarded, okay. Check. Our next thing is passenger signs, on or auto. On, and we'll put that one on auto. Okay, and now we want to go to the window heat. On, and on. 1, 2, 3, 4 green lights, we're good to go there. Window heat is on. And now we want to look down here just a little bit to the hydraulic pumps, and we want to turn on and on. Alright, these ones are going to say low pressure because it's engine driven and the engines are not started, so therefore the pumps are not turning. That's no big deal at this point. Okay, now we'll go over here to the air conditioning system, which is right next to the hydraulic panel. And we want to enter our flight altitude, our cruising altitude. So if we go back to that flight plan that we generated on the sim brief, and we look at our initial altitude, is 33,000 feet. So we'll spin this thing up to 33. And then you also want to enter in your landing field elevation. So we want to take a look at the field elevation for Seoul. And their elevation is 23 feet. I always add a couple extra 100 feet here, so what I'm going to do is just set this to 250 feet. If you're flying at 250 feet, your pressurization doesn't really matter. We've got the landing altitude destination field elevation in. At this point, you would also get your ATC clearance. So we would call up and they would say you're cleared, and they'd give us an initial altitude and all that good stuff. So now we want to go down to the FMC. Okay, and one thing that's not on the checklist right here, but I do it right here because the screen's already open, is close the doors. And remove the chocks. And verify the parking brake is set. Okay, so now let's get into the actual FMC here. Alright, model 737ER. Our air racks are good. We want to go to pause init. Put in our airport code. And then if we go to the next page and we double check our GPS matches, and then we copy this to our scratch pad by just clicking on the line select button. We go back to the previous page and we set our IRS position. And that should make everything come to life here. Yep. Alright. And then we'll go to route. Our origin is already saved in the scratch pad. We'll add that there. We'll put in our destination, which is Romeo Kilo Sierra India. Romeo Kilo Sierra India. Our flight number is Yankee Tango 211. Now, you can, with the PMDG, request your flight plan, and it will put everything in there for you and makes it real easy. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it the manual way. So we want to look at our flight plan again and make sure that we verify what our departure runway is, and our runway today is runway 31. So we'll put that in, and then we'll go to the next page, which we want is departures and arrivals, and we'll go to departure, and the departure that's listed on our flight plan is the ENV2C. ENV2C. We'll select that there, and we'll go back to route. And then it has our ENVTC to our transition of NVAR. And from NVAR, it's airway Mike 750. So we want to go via Mike 750, Mike 750. And then the exit for that airway is ANLOT, which is ANLOT. We'll put that in there, and then we'll continue on airway Bravo 1 to APU, Alpha Papa Uniform, and then A1 to Drake. From Drake, it's Q11 to WP 900, and then Lima 4, but we're out of space, so we need to go to the next page. There we go, Lima 4. From Lima 4, it's LibPlo, L-I-P-L-O, Liplo, L-I-P-L-O, to Yankee 741. From Yankee 741 to Bolut, B-O-L-U-T. You can see why a lot of people just do the quick option to Bravo 576. Exiting Bravo 576 at ATOTI. Atoti. Yankee 722 to Olmen, O-L-M-E-N. From Olmen, we want the OMI to see arrival. So we're gonna activate and execute. Go to departures and arrivals. Go to arrival. And we want the OMI to see. Arrival runway 16 left. And then execute. And then we'll go to the perfinite page next here. And this is where we'll have to enter in all of our performance information. Cruising altitude is 33,000 feet, just like we put in earlier, so 330. Average wind is 048 degrees at 17 knots. So 048, and then the dash to separate, 17. Transition altitude is default for flight level 180 for the United States, but overseas it may be different. You may have to change it to as low as 3,000. You can also do the request here and get the information pulled from SimBrief or wherever. Our cost index on this flight is 80. And our reserves are 18.5. Alright, so we open up our electronic flight flag here. We request the data from SimBrief. You can also look at your SimBrief flight plan. Our zero fuel weight is listed here of 139.141. So if we go back over to the FMC, execute. Okay, that's right, but there is not enough fuel in the airplane right now because I've only got 21.4 tons of fuel. So disregard that fuel thing. If we were actually taking this flight, I'd put more fuel on the plane. Okay, we'll go to N1 limit here, and this is where you can choose to derate your takeoff or anything. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it at just the standard takeoff. We'll go over here to takeoff speeds. Our flaps are going to be at 5. We'll select 5. And then we need our center of gravity. And I'm pretty sure we can find our center of gravity. If we go over to the tablet here and we click import from aircraft, it'll give us our center of gravity, which is 28.0. 28.0. Which gives us our trim value of 4.63. And it's just about there. I mean, if you can get it right on, then you're better than I am. Now we want our V speeds, which will be V1 of 151, VR of 153, and V2 of 162. Now remember your V2 speed because you're going to need that here in a few minutes when you program your MCP. You would put in your runway winds here. Alright, and that's really all I ever put in here. I don't really mess with any of this. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Then the next thing I do is I go to legs and I look for discontinuities. And it doesn't look like we have any there. So we are good to go there. The next thing we want to do is go up to the glare shield. Ta-da! Alright, and on the glare shield, we want to look at the EFIS control panel. Altimeters set. We want our altimeters, which are over here. And what's it set at? 2992, that's not right. 2973. Or you can change it to hectopascals, and it would be 1006. That should also make this match with the field elevation. Altimeters are set. Check. Mode control panel, the MCP. Flight directors are both on. Pilot, first officer, check. Auto throttle is off. Check. Indicated airspeed Mach is set at V2 plus 15. Our V2 was 162 knots plus 15. V2 plus 15 would be 177. I round up and go to 180. Few extra knots for the wife and kids. Alright, arm the LNAV. Green light means it's armed. Heading set to runway heading. Runway heading is 310. Imagine that. Go backwards, Dan, it's faster. Heading is set. Altitude pre-select. So, whatever altitude ATC assigns you, we're going to assume they say climb and maintain 10,000. So we'll leave it at 10,000. After you're off the ground and stuff, you've set it to the top altitude, your cruise altitude, and your VNAV will take care of all of that for you. Okay, now we want to go down to the main panel and center pedestal, and our auto brake should be set to RTO for rejected takeoff. Our parking brake is set. Check. COM nav and ADF radios set. Alright, here's your COM nav and ADF radios. We don't really need to mess with anything here for this demonstration, so we'll go ahead and leave that there. Transponder set and standby. It has a number in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, for demonstration purposes will work, and move it to standby. Check. Alright, doors are closed, ground services are released, and chocks are removed. We did that earlier while we had that menu open. And then the captain would call for pre-flight checklist, which is oxygen tested 100%, and navigation transfer and display switches are normal and auto. Normal and auto. Window heat is on. Pressurization mode selector is at auto. Just to verify, yes it is. Parking brake is set and engine start levers are at cutoff. Engine start levers 1 and 2 are at cutoff. Check. Pre-flight checklist complete. And then we would call ATC and request push and start. Hong Kong ground, Yeti 211, request push and start. And then they would clear us for push and start. Now you can do your pushback two ways. You can do the ATC menu through here and go to ground and request pushback and do it that way. Or in the PMDG, you can do it from the FMC. We'll go to menu. We'll go to flight sim actions. We'll go to pushback. Chocks are removed. We want to straight out. We have to select a tug and then start.
Go ahead. We've been cleared for pushback and start tail straight out. Roger that. Ready for push straight back. Release the brakes, please.
We'll take the brakes off. Kind of ridiculous to push back here, but for demonstration purposes, this is how it works. My only complaint is I wish this one would go away, because that looks goofy. I guess if you use the Microsoft pushback, then this pushback truck would be doing what this little pushback truck's doing, so you could avoid that. Alright, and now we are cleared for push and start, so that means rather than admiring this beautiful aircraft being pushed backwards, let's go ahead and start the engines. So we want to go back to our overhead panel here. Flight deck doors and windows are locked. Air conditioning packs are off. Are they off? Off and off, yes. Anti-collision light is not on. Anti-collision light is now on. Check. Alright, then the captain calls for the before start checklist. Alright, set the brake. There we go.
Brake set.
Flight deck door closed and locked. Fuel's checked. Passenger signs are on auto. Windows are locked. MCP V2 heading and altitude are set. Takeoff speeds V1, VR, and V2 are set. Rudder and aileron trims are at 0. Taxi and takeoff briefing is complete. We're not going to do a taxi and takeoff briefing because we're not taxiing and taking off in this video. Brief complete. Okay, now we are on the engine start checklist. Verify your throttles are at idle. Throttles are at idle, check. Engine start selector to ground. And we're going to start on the right side today. Go to ground. We'll go down here. We'll watch the gauges come to life here. Alright, now we see the N2 start to rise. And we're looking for 2829. And we'll add fuel. And hopefully the engine will go suck, boom, bang, and start. Alright, there's the light off. We see the fuel flow increasing here. We see the N2 coming up and the N1 coming up. Start valve is still open, so engine is not stabilized. Although we do have good oil pressure, the low oil pressure light is off. The starter valve should close here as soon as the engine start is stabilized. I think that's what that click is. There we go, it's gone. And that's going to come up to about 20% or so. I like to wait for these temperatures to kind of calm down before I start the next engine. Verify off, auto N2 OK. Now we repeat the process a second time around. For the left engine, go to ground. We're looking for between 28 and 29. Add fuel. Suck, boom, bang again. Alright, there's the light off. Start valve is closed, the engine start is stabilized, and it'll come up to 21%. And we're looking for above 59 on the N2, we've got 61.2 and 61.4. We have two good engines. Okay, let's move on to the after start checklist. Engine generators are on and on. Probe heat switches are in auto. The probe heat is up here by the window heat. Probe switches are in auto. Check. Anti-ice is required, not required today. Air conditioning and pressurization packs are in auto. Auto, auto. Isolation valve switch is in auto. I believe so. Auto, check. Engine bleed errors. Are on. APU bleed air off. On, off. After start checklist would be generators on, check. Probe heat is on. Anti-ice is not required. Isolation valve is on auto. Engine start switches are on continuous. Only without auto ignition. We have auto ignition, so that does not apply. Auto brakes are set to RTO. Flight controls free and correct, and ground equipment is clear. At this time, you would call ATC for taxi, and you are ready to taxi the airplane. So we have gone from cold and dark to engine start. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment below. If I did something different and you want to point it out that I did it wrong or a different way to do it, feel free to do so. We can all learn something new from one another. As always, there are some links in the description for the Say Intentions AI ATC. If you haven't already, you can use that link to get a free 24-hour trial, and if you decide to keep it, it does help the channel. I appreciate everyone that has done it so far. There is also a link for the Beam eye tracker. If you haven't seen the video review that I did on the Beam eye tracker, be sure to check that out. If you're interested, go ahead and click on the link. Otherwise, just remember to subscribe, like, comment, and have a great day. Thanks for watching the video. Everybody have a wonderful day.